Every timing analysis we've done so far has quietly assumed one thing, that the clock arrives at every flip flop at the exact same moment. Clean, synchronous, perfect. Real chips don't work that way. The clock signal has to physically travel through wires, through buffers, to reach millions of flip flops scattered across a die that might be 10 or 15 millimeters on a side. Different flip flops sit at different distances from the clock source on different branches of the distribution network. The clock simply cannot arrive everywhere at the same instant. That arrival time difference is called clock skew, and it's one of the most important and most misunderstood effects in digital timing. In this video, we'll build a complete picture: how the clock gets distributed, why skew occurs, how it reshapes your setup and hold margins, and what designers do about it. Let's start with the scale of the problem. A modern processor might have tens of millions of flip flops. Every single one needs to receive the clock signal every cycle, reliably, with controlled timing. You can't just run one wire from the clock source to all of them. A single wire driving that load would collapse under the capacitance. The edge would be so slow and degraded it would be useless. The solution is the clock tree, a hierarchical network of buffers and wires that branches out across the chip, like the name suggests, a tree. The clock source drives the root, the signal fans through successive layers of buffering, and the leaves deliver the clocks to individual registers. The clock tree is one of the most carefully engineered structures on a chip. It has enormous fanout, spans large physical distances, and consumes a significant fraction of the chip power. Getting it right is a major discipline in physical design. Now, as the clock signal travels from the source through the buffers and wires of the clock tree, it accumulates delay at every step. The total time from the clock source to the clock pin of a particular register is called the clock insertion delay. Think of it as the clock's own arrival time, if you will. Before the flip flop can even launch data, it has to wait for its clock edge to show. The insertion delay isn't the same for every register. A flip flop at the end of a long clock branch sees more buffer stages and more wire than the one closer to the root. This variation is exactly what causes skew, and it's why clock tree design is so challenging. So, clock skew is simply the difference in clock arrival time between two registers. Here's a concrete example. Suppose the clock reaches the launch flip flop at 150 picoseconds after the clock source transitions. The capture flip flop, sitting on a different branch of the clock tree, receives its clock edge at 200 picoseconds. The skew between them is 50 picoseconds. That 50 picosecond doesn't sound like much, but at gigahertz frequencies, where your entire timing budget may be 400 or 500 picoseconds, 50 picoseconds is a significant fraction. And crucially, the direction of the skew matters as much as the magnitude. Skew changes the effective timing relationship between the two registers. Let's see how. In a perfect zero skew world, the capture flip flop's clock edge arrives exactly one clock period after the launch edge. That gives the data signal the full clock period minus setup time, of course, to travel through the combinational logic. Now introduce skew. If the capture flip flops arrives later than the launch flip flop's clock, the gap between the two edges is now greater than one clock period. The data has more time to propagate. This is a positive skew. It helps set up timing. If the capture clock, on the other hand, arrives earlier than the launch clock, the effective window shrinks. The data has less time to arrive before the capture edge. This is a negative skew. It hurts setup timing. The critical insight is that skew is not just a source of problems. Its direction determines whether it helps or hurts, and which timing check it helps or hurts. Let's write this out precisely. Without skew, the time setup constraint is TCQ plus T logic is less than T clock minus T setup. With a positive clock skew, that is when the capture clock arrives later by a T skew, the constraints becomes TCQ plus T logic is less than T clock minus T setup plus T skew. The skew term appears on the right side of that inequality, effectively expanding the available timing budget. Positive skew gives the data path more room. This is why a path with a tight setup slack can sometimes be fixed by adjusting the clock tree, deliberately delaying the capture clock to create a positive skew on that specific path. That technique has a name and we'll come to it shortly. Now here's where skew becomes a double-edged sword. The same positive skew that helps set up timing tightens the hold timing. Hold timing checks the minimum path delay. It asks, does the data change too quickly after the launch edge, potentially corrupting what the capture flip-flop just sampled? With a positive skew, the capture clock arrives later, but the launch edge hasn't moved. The capture flip-flop is still in its hold window when the new data is already propagating through. More skew means a wider hold window to satisfy. The hold constraint with skew becomes TCQ min plus T logic min should be greater than T hold plus T skew. The skew appears on the right side here too. It makes the constraint harder to meet. This is the fundamental tension. Positive skew helps setup but hurts hold. You cannot have it both ways. Every time you use skew to fix a setup violation, you must verify you haven't created a hold violation somewhere else. Let's make this concrete with numbers. Launch clock arrives at 150 picoseconds. Capture clock arrives at 200 picoseconds. It has a skew of plus 50 picoseconds. Effect on setup, the capture window shifts 50 picoseconds later. Setup slack increases by 50 picoseconds. A path that was 50 picoseconds from failing now passes cleanly. Effect on hold, the hold window expands. Hold margin decreases by 50 picoseconds. So if the minimum path delay was already tight, this same 50 picoseconds of positive skew could create a hold violation. Notice that skew moves setup and hold margins in opposite directions by the same amount. Every picosecond you gain on setup, you lose on hold. This is a conserved quantity. There's no free lunch in the clock domain. Now here's a clever insight. If the skew is going to exist anyway, why not put it to work? Useful skew is the intentional introduction of a clock skew to improve timing on specific critical paths. Instead of trying to eliminate all skew, which is expensive and sometimes impossible, designers deliberately adjust the clock tree so that certain capture flip-flops receive their clock slightly later. The result, the setup timing budget for those critical paths expands, potentially fixing violations without any changes to the logic itself. Useful skew is one of those more sophisticated tools in timing closure arsenal. It's particularly valuable late in the design process when the netlist is frozen and other options are exhausted. But it must be applied with awareness of the hold impact. Any path that benefits from the delayed capture clock must also be checked for hold violations under all PVT corners. Modern EDA tools can apply useful skew automatically as a part of the timing optimization flow. So how does the clock tree actually get built? That's the job of a clock tree synthesis, CTS, a dedicated stage in the physical design flow. CTS takes the placed netlist and constructs the clock distribution network. Its primary goals are minimize skew across all registers, sharing the same clock domain, control the total insertion delay, and keep clock uncertainty low. The tool achieves this through balanced routing, constructing tree branches that have approximately equal delay to all leaf flip-flops, combined with strategic buffer insertion to drive the wire capacitance at each level. Getting CTS right is one of the most consequential steps in timing closure. A poorly balanced clock tree can leave some parts of the chip with a large positive skew and others with a large negative skew, creating setup violations in one region and hold violation in another simultaneously. Even a perfect clock tree can't guarantee that the clock edge arrives at exactly the predicted time on every cycle. Real clocks have variability, and this variability is captured in timing analysis through a parameter known as clock uncertainty. Clock uncertainty is a catch all margin that accounts for several sources of unpredictability: cycle to cycle variation in the clock generator, also known as jitter, residual skew that the CTS tool couldn't fully eliminate, process variation in the clock tree buffers, and inaccuracies in the timing models used during analysis. In STA, clock uncertainty is treated as a deduction from the available timing budget. It makes setup analysis more pessimistic, as if the captured edge arrived slightly earlier than predicted, ensuring the design still functions correctly even when the clock wobbles a little. The largest contributor to clock uncertainty in most designs is clock jitter, the cycle to cycle variation in the exact position of the clock edges. Jitter is not a constant offset like skew, it's a random variation. On any given cycle, the clock edge might arrive 10 picosecond early, on the next cycle 15 picosecond late. The clock source, typically a PLL, is the primary origin, but power supply noise and substrate coupling can add to it. From a timing perspective, jitter effectively shrinks your available clock period. If jitter is plus or minus 20 picoseconds, your STA tool treats the effective period as 40 picoseconds shorter than nominal. Because in the worst case, the launch edge was 20 picoseconds late and the capture edge was 20 picosecond early. That's 40 picoseconds eaten out of your timing budget before a single gate has been analyzed. This is why low jitter PLLs are so valuable in high performance design. Every picosecond of jitter reduction directly translates into timing budget you can use elsewhere. So putting it all together, the complete setup timing equation looks like TCQ plus T logic plus T skew plus T uncertainty should be less than T clock minus T setup. The left side is everything that eats into your timing budget: data path delay, any negative skew, and uncertainty margin. The right side is what the clock period gives you back, minus the setup requirement of the capture flip flop. Skew here is signed. Positive skew appears on the right side, helping, and the negative skew appears on the left, hurting. Uncertainty always appears on the left, it always costs you. STA tools compute this inequality automatically for every timing path in the design, using extracted clock tree delays and the uncertainty values you specify. The setup slack reported in your timing report is the margin remaining after all these terms are balanced. When you open a real STA report, you'll see the clock network's contributions laid out explicitly. For any timing path, the report shows the clock insertion delay at both the launch and capture registers, the computed skew between them, and the uncertainty margin applied. A typical example might show insertion delay of 180 picoseconds, a skew of 40 picoseconds, uncertainty of 25 picoseconds. That 25 picosecond of uncertainty alone is costing you more than many logic gates put. Understanding where these numbers come from and what drives them up or down is essential for diagnosing why a path is failing. Engineers who can read a clock section of an STA report fluently have a significant advantage at timing closure. The numbers aren't just constraints to satisfy, they are diagnostics that point to where in the clock tree the problem lies. So let's look at the takeaways from this lecture. The clock is distributed through a clock tree, a hierarchical network of buffers and wires. Because different paths through the tree have different delays, registers receive the clock at slightly different times. That difference is a clock skew. Skew is signed and consequential. Positive skew helps set up but tightens hold. Negative skew does the reverse. Every timing analysis must account for both effects simultaneously. Clock uncertainty adds a further margin to cover jitter, residual variation, and modeling inaccuracies. It always reduces the available timing budget. Together, insertion delay, skew, and uncertainty mean that the clock network is not a passive passenger in timing closure. It's an active participant. How well the clock tree is designed and balanced directly determines how much timing margin is left for the data paths. In the next video, we'll look at how all of these effects, gate delay, interconnect delay, and clock network effects, come together in a complete STA sign-off flow.